Hey, my name's Katsu. I'm gonna show you a little bit of how I made my Kill For Me Always remix. New Porter release. Gotta get excited, right? So I remember every time Porter drops a new track, I'm always a little behind on like getting the remix out timely. So this time around, I decided I was gonna try to be one of the first people to get it done, put out something like high quality in like the first 24 hours. Let's take a listen to the original first.
Whoa, the soldiers are standing there tall. Decisions I'm having to face. Yeah, they've been killing me.
Definitely feels kind of like Smile-esque, like very hyper poppy, kind of like alt rocky almost. I've never listened to Michael Clifford before, but definitely gonna start listening more. His stuff is super cool. The first thing I noticed was just counting along 3/4 timing or 6/8 timing. It's not like your standard 4/4. First thing I did was just grab the acapella, pull it in. If you wonder how I do my acapellas, I download them just online Ripper, and then I run it through UVR, Ultimate Vocal Remover. It's a super cool tool for just isolating vocals or isolating instrumentals from tracks. I do it for basically all my remixes, and the quality is as good as it gets, honestly. So here's what the initial acapella sounded like.
I built just for. I thought I could hold up the wall.
Yeah, so definitely like slapping it in at 4/4, I realized like there's no way this is just gonna work like right out the gate. So being smart, I decided the first thing to do was take the acapella, figure out a timing. So a lot of times when I do this, I'll literally just lay down like basic drums first, add some hats, and then I basically went through and with every single clip, I would like stretch or resize or retime. Just make sure if you do this, switch it over to the Complex Pro mode, especially if you're pitch shifting it like I did. I always pitch shift the remixes a little bit just to, make it a little bit different. And then I think creatively it ends up making sure it's going to sound different because you'll kind of pick different chords, hopefully, than the original. So I went through, timed all of them. Let's check it out with like just a metronome first.
The castles I built just for. I thought I could hold up the wall. The soldiers are standing there tall. But they let their guard down when you sang and you kissed them all.
Probably could have timed it like a little more literally like on the grid. But basically I just kind of ran this loop a bunch of times until I figured out a timing that I liked. Purposely added a bit more space between to give some breathing room, especially because 3/4 it's a lot more like constant. So I tried to lean into those gaps and just kind of follow the general flow. But you'll see like this tiny amount of vocals ends up stretching out a lot further. And then same for the next portion. All of a sudden the length is basically like doubled, right? So yeah, definitely first time doing like a more successful 3/4 remix. I've tried many times in the past. I've failed many times. I'm happy this one finally worked out. I spent like a good chunk of time in the beginning just getting the vocals in place, especially for the chorus. This sounds crazy.
Till it's a little bit too late. Little bit too late. Decisions I'm
There's like a few sneaky parts I had to just do some slices to like expand the timing or, using certain timing markers just to really get it to fit right. Thankfully, I was just writing 4/4 drums, classic Complextro house stuff. I think that definitely simplified it a little bit. Usually for the vocals, I don't do like a ton. Okay, I lied. I don't do like a ton of heavy processing. I try to think of processing for vocals like death by a million cuts. I think a lot of little tweaks as you go and as the track evolves goes a lot further than just like slapping on one giant rack at the start. So just to kind of walk you through what I did here, I think initially my main thing that I usually do is I'll slap like an OTT on, but I'll run it like super low, depth or mix. I think this is basically the mix knob for the OTT. Sometimes I'll mess with the balancing a little bit, but I think here it just felt like it needed a bit more sharpness. So I use that. Next up is an EQ, right? Just to kind of tame down the highs a little bit. I think I liked how the OTT expanded the signal, but it did get like a little bit shrill. So, and then this soothe got added later on during mixing. It started getting really like piercy on the ears. So I just put on a soothe, basically just tame like the really painful like 4 to 8K sibilance area. That's where a lot of my leads and chord stacks and stuff conflict really heavily. So I decided to chop that out. And then I didn't really want it to affect my low end too much because I had already cut it just in case. This is my vocal starter rack. It's basically just dry, wet. I don't usually do delays and stuff on my vocal starter rack because I feel like a lot of these like remixed recordings already have some level of delay. or I like to custom do mine. So to kind of check out the main signal, right, the main core vocal.
The castles I built just to fall. I thought I could hold up the wall.
Just some like basic reverb. I have it sidechained to itself. That way, like whenever it's singing, it's pretty dry, and then that way the tail kind of comes out as it goes. It's pretty gentle, honestly. It's not super heavy. Basically, for the dry side, I just have some more de-essing. A lot of these vocals need a lot of de-essing help, especially because of the acapella ripping. A lot of artifacts get introduced, and this helps a lot, especially after I'm running like an OTT to blow it up a bit. Maybe kind of counterintuitive, but if it works, it works. I just found that's what works for me. Try some different things. The way I do my delays, I'll usually just duplicate and I'll make a new track below. And I just have this like echo that I've set up. Sometimes I run it with ducking, but in this case, I didn't really touch anything. 100% dry wet. So it's kind of similar to if I just added another chain inside my vocal starter rack, but this gives me a bit more fine tune control. I can basically like copy paste bits that I want to echo and nothing else will echo. So it gives a much cleaner result. You'll notice it kind of comes after just because the dry wet's at 100, so you don't hear that initial signal hit. Yeah, and I'm an absolute sucker for like ping pong delay. Just dial down the stereo a bit, otherwise it gets kind of overwhelming. So that's like a bit of the vocal work. I think for the chorus vocals, I build a different track usually. One, because like there's different singers on the vocals. I think Porter's like doing some harmonies here. The drop, I want it to hit a lot harder. So I'll do like a bit more special effects, like bit of Redux automation. I think I have like a few little Redux sweeps for that B section of my drop. And then same thing, make it slightly more narrow, but it's still wider than the other one. Same OTT. And then because it's singing in like a different octave, it's singing a pretty different portion. I have to rethink the EQs a bit. So here I actually went the opposite. I made it a little bit sharper. And then same thing, have the soothe just to dial it back a tad. Here I was kind of lazy. I just put a reverb on top of the whole thing, just really short. I feel like it worked. Maybe the, vocal chain would have been better. I don't know, but that's just what I did and it was fine, so I didn't touch it. A lot of times in the mix, like it's tempting to just always be like, oh, I need to use that really special reverb. I need to use that really like unique compressor or something. But like in the end, if you're compressing when it needs it, you're using reverb when it needs it to give it space, I feel like it works. I run like a lot of stock stuff just because it's a lot quicker, even though I have all these kind of fancy reverb plugins that I've picked up over the years. So here's the chorus.
You leave my tears on your face till it's a little bit too late.
So if I turn off this entire rack,
You leave my tears on your face.
it's like pretty subtle, honestly. The original one is a little more boxy, a little more like mid-heavy. I just wanted to kind of balance it out a bit, tame some of the pain parts, and then boost up the highs again to kind of compensate.
You leave my tears on your face.
I went for like a warmer sound because I knew I was stacking a lot of like super glitchy, choppy, like lead elements. And I could make this like mixed in like pop style, like vocal is everything, right? But I had it take more of a backseat so you could hear more of the, the instrumental and stuff where I can show off more of my personal style. If people want to hear like the original in like a pop style, you already got the original, right? They're not going to listen to my remix for that. So I always try to think that way, like what's a different angle or like a different flavor that I can kind of bring in might catch people's attention, might be something you wouldn't have imagined, right? Let's take a look through some of the drum work. So intro drums. It's pretty straightforward. I don't complicate drums too much. I know a lot of people like to do like a purely audio or, oh, I only do my drums with like MIDI. I tend to be like a halfway. I do like the core drums in MIDI because like I'm not going to be doing like a ton of ghost notes or like super sneaky things here. I think in this case, I do have a few little ghost notes, but they're pretty subtle. It's not as much as like a full percussion loop. And then a lot of times the hats I do MIDI too because I can separate it. I can use groove pool, right? I'm using like a gentle swing on it. That would be really hard to do by hand. And I just find this easier. I can use like the velocity controls. I think I did that here. I would like make a pattern and I'd add some deviation and then I would like flatten it so it kind of captures it, right? If I wanted like a different feel, I could hit randomize a few times and then maybe dial it back a little bit and it'll give me like a different feel. It ends up like not making a massive difference, but it's little things like this, right? Death by a million cuts. To keep things simpler, I tend to try to use more hat loops, stuff like that, where it's just like simple loops. I'll do like a bit of tweaking This one is like pitched completely different and like shortened, but I'll do little things like this because something about like this process feels more natural to me. It feels more like you're playing around. Maybe you're not necessarily like intricately crafting every little part, but you heard this thing, you're like thinking, how can I mold the puzzle piece? That's what I find pretty interesting. And I know how to make a lot of these sounds, but that's why I do go the sample route a lot of times, because like it just gives me more weird results and it's not as predictable as when I just write hats myself. Plus, other people are really good at writing hats. Like there's people way better than me. If they write a better sample loop that just fits better there, I'm going to use theirs, right? I'll use whatever works best for the song. Let's hop into melodics. This is what a lot of people kind of ask me about. I do teach piano as my main, career choice. I feel like that definitely helps. But ironically, when I first started writing like chords and stuff, I was really bad at writing like songwriting chords. Like it was kind of a different skill set. Like I come from a classical background where like you are given a sheet music and you play what's there. But when it comes down to like writing your own stuff from scratch, it's a whole different game. I had to really practice learning to write chords and not trying to have one piano part overtake the whole song. That was definitely an issue I had for like, honestly, like the first like 5 years. I was always trying to flex with the piano part, but nowadays it's like if it's a simple like, I don't know, 1-4-6-5 progression and it works, do that. Just do it with like cool sounds. Do it in a cool placement, right? Time the chords interestingly. Do some automation, right? The chords don't have to be super complicated, but it's about what role it plays in the song. So let's take a look at what I wrote. I don't even remember. Nice. Nice. So rather than going fully into chord theory, I'll try to explain it in a way that might be more applicable to most people. I try to space out the voicings. When you have two low notes that kind of stick together really close, like for example, this is a C chord. I got C's, E's, G's. You can use sevenths, B's, D's. You can use all kinds of notes stacked in this, but at its core, it's a C chord. If I go lower and I stack the G down lower, you'll notice the spacing looks kind of different. It's like very crammed here, not much in the middle, very crammed here, right? That gives me a much like deeper kind of hit. And sometimes that's what I want, but it also muddies up your low end a lot. If you're writing stuff for production, especially if you're gonna have a vocal, leaving a bit more space here doesn't hurt. So a lot of times I'll play with like different voicing spacings. Like here I chose to just do an octave on the bottom, but the space worked out better than if I had done like a third, right? An E. Like that sounds pretty terrible. A G. That's kind of intense, right? It's the start of the song. I don't really want to assault your ears with like a super heavy chord. C. That's kind of what I went with. Let's try like a little more spaced out, an E up top instead. Each one gives like a lot of different results, but you don't have to know super complicated chord writing. You just have to be willing to like play around with the voices. Or here I added in a seventh, right? But rather than leading with it on the top, like a lot of people do by default, that ends up kind of overtaking my melody line. That's gonna lead with a bum, but maybe here I wanted to lead with an E. So what I would do is I would just take that B, I would try some different locations and see like where it works. Shift plus your up and down arrows to jump by octaves. So I ended here, right? But maybe I could have gone lower. Not too hot, but you'll kind of see just by trying different combinations, you'll kind of learn spacings that work for you and that work for your production, right? Same thing here, right? That's an F chord. What if I lead with the B? Very like ascending almost, like it feels like, oh my God, I'm going, I'm gone, I think definitely with this one, I could try lower. Not a fan, I think it's clashing here. Or maybe instead of a B, let's do like a sixth, right? The D is the sixth of F, right? Or maybe I could do like a F to kind of lead into the next F, right? To make the progression smoother. But the moral of the story here is like, try different voicings. A lot of times you can start with basic triads and just like shift things around with shift plus up and down. If it's not fancy enough or you want like a more soulful, crowded, dirty chord, just add in like some seconds, fourths, sevenths, ninths. Just try some different ones and see what works. One other tip I have for chords is like, Definitely try to make the chords flow. You don't really want chords to like do these gigantic jumps. Obviously, music, there's no rules. You can do what the hell you want, right? That's fine. But I found if you generally tend to have certain notes overlap a bit more, that will help kind of centralize your chords and make it flow a little bit smoother. Like whenever you hear these really sexy like walk downs, right? Those are typically just done with like very little movement or some sort of like central tone that's connecting all of them. If I had to say what my center is for these chords, you'll kind of see these notes that I highlighted. I'm hovering basically around that C and B, and I'm using that to kind of tie all the chords together. If I turn those off, all of a sudden, the center of the chords changes a little bit, right? You'll hear there's a big dip there, and then these hold, these dip again, and then these kind of have that little walk. That's why inverting stuff is super important, but you don't have to be like a beast at chord writing to write good chords. Once I get the basic chords, then I'm kind of lazy. I'll take that same one. Sometimes I'll revoice it, sometimes I don't. I think here I was trying to write fast, so I didn't end up changing it, but then you add some layers. So I did this offbeat strum. It's kind of a weird sound. Like you would hear it on its own, you probably wouldn't put it in, but I feel like layered together sounded nice. I feel like I just like that it gave some character. I've been definitely reaching for like how to add more texture, more like weirdness to chords, because I could write chords like this all day, but definitely picking the sounds and stuff is what feels pretty interesting to me lately. Let's check out another layer. Yeah, this melody, a lot of people probably thought maybe I'd played this in, but I just found the sample. I was like, I love this sound. It's super pretty. Kind of reminds me of like an Omnisphere pluck, if you know what I'm talking about. Here's what the loop sounded like originally. Yeah, you'll notice they don't have that like G sharp that's inherent in the walk down that I did. So I'll take it, I'll slice it in certain notes during certain chords. I think, yeah, these ones, you'll see I did like a +1 or a -2. I kind of ended up retiming these a little just to kind of change the notes. So it's kind of like playing piano still, but just doing it in sample format is something I really like to do. I feel like it makes things interesting and gives me a lot of control. So let's hear these three together. It's like already getting there. I think it definitely had a bit of a gap here, so I added in I tried this kind of like backing lead in the early versions, but I ended up taking it out because it felt like a little bit too busy. And then down here, same thing, there were these others. There were a few chops that I was like playing around with, or like this. I think that one stayed in because it needed a bit of a like wind riser. But a lot of times during mixing, I'll end up taking out those ideas. But during composition, I'm literally just slapping stuff against the wall. Like I almost always over add because it's so much easier to just take things out. But if you need to add something and you don't know what to put in, that can be really difficult, right? You gotta scratch your brain, try something completely new, and just hope it works. So I try to get that out of the way during the composition, and then afterwards during mixing, I can just take things out or maybe just slide it into a different spot, right, and see what happens. I feel like that makes the mixing part a lot more, manageable and a lot more interesting to me. So last part would definitely just be the bass line. I had the main bass. Good old Omnisphere. I actually don't use it much anymore, but I pulled it out here because I wanted something a little more analog feeling. I feel like some of their presets sound really nice, and then I tweak it a little bit. Basically just a basic sign, to be honest, bit of release. And then there's the second layer. You'll notice I just cut out all the lows. I wanted like the hit and the tonality of this one, but I wanted it to feel like one bass. Yeah, not rocket science, just taking certain notes, turning off everything else. With the right puzzle pieces, with the right sounds, I did have to try quite a few. Here's what they sound like all together. Yeah, it's like nice. A lot of these little things I add are very subtle, honestly, for my intros, but it's because I want people to listen to Michael sing, and I want to highlight the vocal, but I don't want to like overtake entirely, So let's hear it all together.
Castles I built just to fall. I thought I could hold up the
So nice, easy little intro. I ended up reusing that for the later part of the song. It's basically identical, but I tweaked a few little things. Second time around, a lot of times you don't have to do a ton. You could do like a whole different beat, a whole different melodic. Sometimes I'll do a whole different melodic, but again, time crunch here. I think I kept it pretty simple.
I thought it would never get old.
I think this time around, I just added a bit of a texture. Yeah, fantastic texture. I just wanted that high end, just a little something to make it a tiny bit more magical. I think in the end, I decided not to really tweak it because, again, I tend to over tweak things. I wanted to keep it a little more consistent. For other people, it might be the opposite. Like you tend to keep things too consistent, then, you know, try to go a bit more wild, lean into that like crazy side that tells you to like do like the polar opposite of what you usually do, right? I'm pretty chaotic in general, so I try to lean into the calmer, the more peaceful, like, oh, let's just roll the loop side of me. So let's walk into our pre-chorus or the build-up. This part is pretty short, just different chord progression. I want something a little bit more, like, not too energetic, but it definitely had to build a little bit of energy. I think the intro verse was very, very chill, so it gave me a bit of room to grow. A lot of times I'll kind of take out the drums. I think here I just ran the hat loop. And some claps. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Vocals.
The castle is me. Be careful of the lies you believe about me.
Yeah, straightforward. Same tricks there. Little bit of a cheeky pre-drop. Yeah. So the way I do a lot of these fills, I use samples. Crazy. A lot of times I'll do MIDI sometimes, like similar to building chords, I'll build the basic rhythm first. Like maybe it's da da da, or it's like a da 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 da, right? I'll kind of fill out that timing first. And basically you layer in different sounds and try like a lot of weird combinations so you get something that works. Like here, I think I had a bit of a snare roll, which was cool, but when I played it all together, it didn't really fit. So I ended up cutting it. Umru fill as the basic rhythm. It's just 2 hits. I think I stretched out this one, pitched it down a bit. So I wanted this hit to feel really big. Add in a reverse. Right, that kind of like weird hyper poppy like flick. Add in another hit and one more. So when you do it together, super straightforward, but definitely like the fills are kind of your spot to showcase some of your character, go a little crazy. Don't be afraid to try like super weird fills, and like if it doesn't work, just try some more till it works, right? So during the build, I found this really, really cool sound. It has this kind of like reverse like reverb sweep. It also stays on forever, so I had to automate the volume so it's only on during these parts. But I really liked that reverse. I feel like that added a lot. And the way that I timed my chords would make the reverse hit a bit more different than if I just held one chord. It's like a combination of happy accidents, and I basically just built around that. So got the standard piano. Yeah, it's like a LFO-y kind of thing for texture. And then my favorite flute bar, oh my god, Arturia Whirly. They have this sound called flute bar. I always tweak it a little bit, but this thing is just gorgeous. Like, yeah, like this thing is goated. It's basically, it's like holding a sine wave type sound, but it just gives a bit more character, a bit more like natural, organic instrument sounding stuff. I had this guitar reverses sound, but I ended up taking it out because it just made it too busy. It's really pretty. In hindsight, I kind of wish I left it in, but there's like so much going on here that it just didn't feel like it had a space. So I had to make the call, cut it, and ended up sounding fine without it. All good. Lately, I've been really into adding these kind of like custom arpeggios. Some people just play a chord and hold it. I always try to like manually tweak these, manually play these in. It gives me the ability to do like a few little grace notes, like little flickies, little bits like that. I feel like it just adds a lot of character. And then processing wise, just muffling it a lot because it's not a highlight, it's a backing rhythm. And then I use Portal on default, actually. It gives this really cool like fluttery sound. So that's normal without it. It gives like a bit of that like flutter pulse. I do that a lot for some of my like build-up sounds or atmospheric sounds. It's kind of like Virtual Riot's like auto pan trick, but I'm lazy. I can just slap a portal on by default and it'll do it. So let's take a look. I picked it because it has this really cool texture to it. It's kind of like crunchy, gritty, not pretty on its own, good in the stack. So there's that guitar again. I pitched it down to highlight everything else. Last layer I didn't cover is just bass. I did like a really slow attack, which was kind of interesting. I tend to go for like fast attack, very punchy, plucky plucks. Even for my Reese's, I give them a bit of attack. But this sounds like a super slow attack sound. That just means it's going to ramp like ooh until it hits. You know, it's kind of terminal velocity. So it kind of like hums in. But I liked how that felt very like grand and very like, you know, peaceful, I guess. It just felt good, so I added it. For the FX, multi-layer stuff, EQ it, have some down sweeps, have some up sweeps, you know the drill. And then for the pre-drop, actually, I forgot. I added a few little FX. Yeah, same thing, just a down and then back up. A lot of it is just these kind of up-down motions, and you want to really focus on stuff like that. Here's the whole build-up all together.
A castle is me. Be careful of the lies you believe about me. Can't you see? We broke the truth, and now here come the enemies.
So for the drop portion, you know what it is. 4 on the floor for drums. Nice and simple. I always try to multi-layer some certain claps and snares and stuff. I think here I'm using a kind of like upper clap. And then I'm also using a lower clap. You combine them, gives you the top end, the mid end, gives you that like nice slappy feel. I also layer in some cymbal hits, like crashes, things like that. I like to have them just kind of suddenly cut off. Basically, I know I have like a pretty big downbeat. I think there's a chord that hits here, and then this is just to give it some sizzle. And I do that a lot with like certain accent hits, just to kind of make those downbeats feel a little bit heavier. Yeah, pretty straightforward. I don't think I did that much on drums. I think for this style specifically, it's important to keep it a bit more simple. Same thing, crashes, got some offbeats. Offbeat layer 2. Open hats, and then I found this seismic loop that just kind of filled in a lot of the gaps. Yeah. All together, drum sounds like this. Over here, vocals, I think we kind of went over earlier, but it is just a little bit louder.
You leave my tears on your face.
Nothing really done there. I think most of the effort just went into like timing them, putting them in the right spots, chopping out a few little bits, things like that. I also do some additional chops inside of my drop group. So I kind of organize my project with drop group versus verse group. I feel like I'm usually processing my drop groups pretty similarly. I want them like a little bit louder, a little beefier, a little more compressed. And then for the verses, usually it's like a little more gentle, a little more rounded out. I feel like I just organize this way because it makes sense for me. Let's go through the layers. Ah, yes. This was chopped directly from the instrumental. I think I actually started with this. I was kind of feeling this like pretty straightforward pop, hyperpop kind of chord rhythm. From there, I basically just layered it in with these other samples that I found. There was this pretty nice like Rhodes melodic loop that had some cool chords and voicings. And then I just wanted to slice without thinking too hard. So yeah, definitely one of the cooler things I did was I use shifter a lot for pitch shifting, especially for samples. Basically here, I think I only shifted these ones for some of the fills. If we pop open the automation, you'll see I basically make one layer that does the shift, and then I'll kind of copy it over to a different layer. I think here it's just an octave up, octave down. Yeah, by doing this, and then you mix it with like certain octave drops. Like here I have an octave normal, and then I think it pitches down an octave for one of these, if I can find it. Yeah. So doing little things like that. I think also a filter is like cutting out some of the sounds, just automating it. But that's kind of like the basis of the drop. I'm going to turn off the vocals for now, but let's take a look at what else there is. The rest is honestly just like add-ins. I'll do like little fills. Very like nonsensical, but I think in context it makes sense. This fill, just like a little vocal chop, little lead, some like random trumpet into like a Umru synth. I don't know. I kind of just go through my sounds and try to find things that are interesting and put it in an order that makes sense. So altogether, here's like most of the melodics. There's also a turnaround section at the end. It did like the thing where it stays on when you pedal, so I just froze and deleted the parts in front and behind it. Yeah, same thing there. Making the notes hold, pedal, and then a nice little re. So just to kind of make like a nice swell. So here's the rest of the drop just with everything together. Yeah, I would say that's like a vast majority of the song is basically just that theme. Said I want to keep it simple, but then it definitely felt like after I repeated it twice, even though it's only like, what, 8 bars each time? I think 16 total. It felt a little bit too short, like I should probably extend or expand on it a little bit. I went into kind of the next section. Porter and Michael, they have this part where they say like, yeah, basically how life feels. But yeah, I thought that would be like a cool part to kind of highlight. I was like, let's make a pattern. We'll do a 1, 2, 3 hit and then hit vocal. 1, 2, 3, hit vocal, and then swap into like a B section. I think Noctu ISOXO made this like call and response super popular. I'm kind of hooked on it. I'm a sucker for it. I got to put it in. I like when my music, you know, switches up a lot, and that's just like a stylistic thing. So here, the call, right? The thing that's kind of like getting your initial attention is the first 3 chord hits. And then basically here, I did a little bit of automation because this is like the lead in to the second half of the drop. The second time around, it's a little less extreme. Yeah, I wanted the first one to be like a little more wow factor. So basically pull down the drums and get rid of a lot of it. And then add in a few little like blips, glitch sounds. Yeah, shout out to Sharks and Chime. You guys make some of the coolest glitch sounds. I definitely use those samples a ton. Same thing here, just... Those are just from those earlier hyperpop slices from the original instrumental. I think they're stretched out, not really processed. I think just the stretching made it sound kind of cool. A lot of it was just like shaping them and getting the fade in, fade outs right. The B section, it's kind of like a UK style bass, just like a Reese that sounds like it's like humming, like kind of thing. Every time I hear this kind of bass, it makes me think of Madagascar. Like, I like to move it. But yeah, that type of bass layered with a top layer, like a reverse bass. I like the top layer because it just makes it a little bit more interesting. And then there's this ARP. It's just a callback from earlier in the section. I think I used it again later, and it's basically turns into the outro of the song. And then just chug that guitar, right? So yeah, I added in this other vocal chop, but I re-chopped it a little bit. All together. I felt like the rhythm was pretty catchy. I have no clue what it's saying, but I don't think it matters, right? And then I also sampled in this slice from JJ Lin. If you know who he is, you're great. But he's like a really popular Chinese pop guy, super famous in China. But I took one of his, I think, newer songs. I was kind of like reminiscing on Spotify, just going through stuff. And then it happened to be in the same key. So I tried slicing out like little bits of it. But if I make it a little bigger, here's like a bit of the song. Yeah, super nice like ballady kind of thing. And then I just used it in this tiny little pocket. Yeah, like it's stuff I could totally play, but I wouldn't get that idea of sequence if I didn't have it as like a full sample initially. just to kind of play around with it and like try different things. I remember a lot of times I'll hold down Control Shift for Windows. You can basically slide the sample around without changing like the size of your clips. So if you just slide it around, you can try like other parts. Most likely the chords won't fit in this case, but right, you'll get some pretty interesting results that way. I do that a lot when I'm like scanning through samples just to see like what works. Like if I take the vocal and I basically shift all of these over, maybe it gives me a different rhythm. Yeah, in this case, not super hot, but it's because the notes don't really match the key. I think the way I kind of slice these is pretty chaotic. So I do that while trying to make that initial slice, and then I'll, rehash it later, switch up a few parts if needed. So that's basically the outro of the second half of the drop. And then from there, pretty much just enters like the verse 2. Yeah, Porter's highlight section. His voice was definitely processed a little bit differently, so I had to automate a few things on and off to get it to tweak and sit right here. But more or less, it's pretty much the same. I think I just added a bit of a breakbeat on the build-up, just to give it like a little bit more excitement. I do a lot of like simple automations. And then I was just kind of checking out the new auto filter in Ableton. If you haven't tried it yet, it's pretty neat. There's a lot of like cool features. I was specifically messing with like the LFO built in on it. I feel like it was pretty fun. I don't remember if you had as much visual feedback on the older version, so I really like that. And from there, it just enters second drop, goes into the B section. And basically at this point in the track, I was thinking like, okay, I did the A, I did the B, it did both of those already. I need to do something just a little bit different, but I don't need to reinvent the wheel. So decided to turn off the vocals for a little bit and try like some different chops. I found this really cool Styx vocal chop that I re-chopped again. I heard that, I was just like, okay, we just use that. We turn off Porter, we turn off Michael for a little bit, right? And just roll that for a little bit. And then thankfully, like the timing when I just looped it, it literally worked perfectly with these kind of pockets here. It was just the right sample in the right place at the right time. So after that, I was like, I could keep looping that, but then that will make it feel too loopy again. So I was like, okay, maybe I take that out. What do we do? Piano, Porter piano, like put in a piano lead. Yeah, funny kind of clipping there, but I never noticed it before. I use Arturia augmented pianos a lot just because I feel like their pianos feel organic enough but digital enough, and it's this nice like mid-ground for writing tracks where sometimes I'll try to write as if I'm not playing a piano, like more like a synth, and cool things come out. So that's kind of what I've been feeling lately for my piano plugins, but there's a lot of other ones. You could use like Lounge Lizard, you could use Omnisphere Keyscape. I used to use that a ton. Alicia's Keys, I think the Contact one. You could use stock if you process it enough. Nexus has some nice ones. Definitely has like a piano player background. It's important for me personally to try not to always think like a piano player all the time. Like sometimes trying to write something here on piano, you're tempted to fill in like a bottom line with chords, or like, oh, let's make the melody more complicated. Let's add some runs, some, ornaments, right? Little like glissandos, things like that. A lot of times it just needs a few notes with like a freaking eighth note ping pong and you're good. Now, the cool thing is like the vocal changed earlier, but I feel like it's pretty similar to how I processed this one, and they fused together pretty well with the timing. So I definitely remember like when I was almost done with the track, I had to spend a little bit of time, get this one to match better with the previous part. Definitely like tweaking those, but definitely trying to really focus on songwriting and composition over just like mixing tricks or like, oh, let's put a fill here, right? Really trying to think about the structure more. And I think that came through in the song. I'm really happy with it. So thanks for listening. That was like a quick little rundown of this remix. I think I did it in about 6 to 8 hours. Like it was just like one sitting. I was just feeling it. I was playing with ideas. It was a fantastic time. And then the mixing and the mastering part, I try to do a lot of it along the ways. Like I'm always adding quick EQs or make this wider, put a quick chorus, here's some reverb, right? I'm always trying to do these little million cuts kind of processing. So when I get to the final mix, I don't have to do that much. I even take off a lot of my processing that I have on earlier, like if I don't need it. That's why a lot of tracks end up just with like a basic EQ, basic loop compressor, like stock stuff. And then I'll use the fancier stuff if, it has a place or a use for it. Really learn those built-in plugins. You can do a ton of stuff just with like good songwriting, good samples, good idea, right? Nothing beats a good idea. On my master chain, don't worry too much about it. It's pretty straightforward. I know I have a lot of like random plugins here, but the most important one that I use is just Isotope Dynamics specifically. I don't load on the whole thing because I don't need a lot of the other plugins that they have. Like I'll use the Imager and the Dynamics, but then I like to clip myself with K-Clip. That's just my favorite. I've heard there's a lot of other ones. Virtual Riot uses Newfangle, right? A clipper is a clipper. If it sounds good, you're fine, right? So I followed a lot of his like mixing advice, his mastering advice too. Like I realized even after producing for like almost like 10 years now, I wasn't compressing stuff hard enough, especially for like this style of music. Like I really needed to squish my sounds a bit more, glue them together more. And doing that definitely helped me cut down on the number of layers or sounds that play at once. Like I realized I don't really need 10 layers for a supersaw stack. It could just be like 2 or 3. My mixing's changed a lot recently. It will always continue to change, I think. I'm always looking for like how to get it to sound a little bit tighter. Thank you, Virtual Riot. You made all my songs sound a lot better, especially recently. Without further ado, we'll kind of give it a quick full run. And yeah, here's my track, Kill For Me Always, my remix of it. If you liked kind of what we covered here, make sure you hit subscribe, hit follow if you're on Instagram or on TikTok, right? Give it a like, share it to people. And yeah, I'll try to make more. Thanks for listening. Peace.